Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel with semi-breaking news coming from the United Kingdom. Reform UK's party conference, regional conference in Leicester has been interrupted by other Reform UK members who are supporters of Tommy Robinson during the speech done by Lee Anderson. There was a bit of a drama because Lee Anderson decided to hit back in a very robust way, and we're going to talk about what's actually been going and the reaction from both Lee Anderson and the leader of Reform, Nigel Farage, on this. There's a bit of a division right now between those who support Reform UK, but some of them are pro-Tommy and the others are anti-Tommy, and how this is actually could affect the unity of the political right in Britain. Of course, if you are watching this live, you are going to get your reaction in the live chat. Now, first things first, Politico initially reported this actually, and before I saw the actual clip from the conference, Andrew McDonald said Reform UK members are doing pro-Tommy Robinson heckling during Lee Anderson's speech at the Leicester Regional Conference. They said, "Listen to Tommy Robinson," came the first shout from the crowd. After a second pro-Robinson shout, Lee Anderson told the guy to shut up or get out. And then obviously I did find the actual clip from that moment when Lee was talking, and of course he got heckled. Let's quickly go and see his reaction.
Just this week, Labour's... Look, are you going to shut up or just go out? Do you want to come up here and speak? Do you want to come up? Just this week.
So yeah, it was a bit of a confrontational approach. Now, I think partly because of the last couple of days, Elon Musk, who is a Reform UK supporter, but also has come out in support of Tommy Robinson. I think that that intervention has given a number of people who are pro-Tommy, especially if they are Reform supporters as well, I think a bit of confidence to come out and basically say, well, Elon has our back, so we can actually kind of show our voice. But there is a problem because the approach coming from the Reform UK leadership is not sympathetic. I think it will be important. I fully understand the difference between being parliamentary diplomatic as a party and on the other hand, obviously, having a cultural movement that Tommy has. There are differences, even though they're both saying the same thing. But obviously, the different approaches, right? You want to be diplomatic in Parliament. I get that part. But you can still show sympathy towards those who support Tommy Robinson's cause and his message, because, as I said, technically, it's the same type of stuff that Reform UK are already saying anyway. Now, there was a reaction again from Lawrence Fox as well, saying Reform cannot continue down the cancel culture path of Tommy, whilst saying exactly what he has been saying many years before them. It's not difficult. A simple thank you would be enough. I think this goes back to the issue, because I think, as I said, there's one thing to not want to be associated with controversial figures because the media will come after Reform, right? But they could just not talk about Tommy, I guess. Or they could at least say, those who go to the United Kingdom rallies, they are our people too. They vote Reform, they support Reform. Some of them, not everybody. And we hear them. We hear their voices. We understand their concerns. We are saying the same thing, as Lawrence said. They are basically saying the same thing. Now, this then escalated because then Lee Anderson was interviewed by Christopher Hope on GB about this, and he was even more robust in his response to how he feels about Tommy Robinson. Let's go to Lee Anderson.
On him, would he be in the
on Tommy
UK?
Robinson? Well, he pleaded guilty, didn't he? So if he pleaded guilty, he's got to take his sentence.
Would you welcome him back into the Reform UK?
Tommy Robinson? No, I won't welcome him into Reform UK. I think we made our position quite clear on that. Chopper is we need to win the next election to save this great country of ours, and we can't have any distractions at all. I think Tommy Robinson would be a distraction. For the sake of this country, if anybody watching this tonight, we need to win the next election. No distractions.
Yeah, I mean, he went with the position of it will be a distraction. He's a distraction. But I think the more you talk about him, that creates a distraction as well. So, which again goes back to the party leader himself, Nigel Farage, because he was also being interviewed. Again, there could be a different approach to this. You could just distance yourself because it might affect your parliamentary credibility as a party. But you could just avoid talking about him, or at least avoid attacking his supporters. I think there is a line. And again, there is a whole point about reform trying to become mainstream and trying to aim to win the next general election. But saying it out loud makes things even more divided. Let's go to Nigel and see what he said about Tom.
Equally, there are people in Britain who think that Robinson is a political prisoner. That's the narrative that he's pushed out. That's how he earns his living. But it isn't quite true.
Would you accept Robinson as a member of your party? You quit UKIP over the association with him last time.
No. Look, Robinson has been to prison many, many times for many, many things.
So Nigel then decided to actually completely directly attack him. Again, he could have taken probably a different approach, saying, no, I don't want to, I've got nothing to do with Tommy, for example, which is true. They don't have a relationship. And he could just say, next question, right? But he actually decided to not just double down, but to make sure everybody in the mainstream, that includes The Guardian, the BBC, the Labour Party, the Tory Party, all the people in the Westminster bubble to know that not only he doesn't want to be associated with Tommy, but he actually dislikes everything about him, his personality. So he went personal, saying that, he's been in prison many times, and basically what he says is untrue. He's a fraud, and he's gone to prison not because he's a hero fighting against grooming gangs, but because of the contempt of court. Again, it depends on how things end up, because Reform UK are getting a lot of support anyway. They're getting a lot of Conservatives from the Tory party defecting, but we have the first past first system, which means it doesn't really matter the percentage of support you get. Elections are won based on a few seats, very marginal seats, usually double digits. 2015, the Conservative Party managed to get a majority of 12 seats, 12 MPs. But actually, if you look at the number of votes, the margin in each of the key marginal seats, the closest seats, elections that they won, it was between 1,000 to 2,000 votes. So that means if about 1,000 people had changed their mind in the country in those seats, then the whole election would have been different. Ed Miliband would be Prime Minister. That's how close and sensitive each seat is. So if you don't have the full support, it could be tricky, considering Reform UK is aiming for the red wall for the Labour areas as well. They're not necessarily Tory areas, but they are getting a lot of Tory support. Well, we obviously, as I said, the beginning of the previous live stream earlier tonight, some breaking news. Marco Longhi, the former Tory MP, has also tonight defected to Reform UK, and at obviously this regional conference, he made the announcement. He said, I am a patriot and I finally feel at home. I am here because the party of which I have been a member of for decades has lost its soul. It has changed. I have not. So it's another senior Tory and a former Tory MP who has now defected to Reform UK. Obviously, this is going to be quite worrying for Kemi Badenoch and CCHQ. We'll see what reaction they're going to have. Let's get some reaction from you guys now in the live chat. We got Aaron, thank you for your super chat, saying Musk should redirect his support to UKIP from Reform. Well, it's tricky because UKIP don't have enough members or candidates to actually stand in all the constituencies. So if you want to win a general election, obviously you want to support a political party. I'm not saying what party you should support, whether Tory or Reform or whatever, but if you want to win general election against the Labour Party, you should back a party that has enough resources and candidates for all the seats. If you want to do a protest vote, then yeah, obviously there are so many other options. You got UKIP, you got the Liberal Democrats, you got the Green Party, you got the Heritage Party. So it really depends what you care about in this next general election. Is it to send a message to the establishment, or is it to get Starmer out? Each election people feel differently. Ivan says, Nigel could distance as opposed to slagging him off and his supporters. I think, that's what a lot of people are saying as well. A lot of people who are trying to kind of go with reason, saying, well, we understand you don't want to be associated because the Tommy branding might be controversial because none of you came out to support him and defend him all those years ago. Now they're all saying the same thing as Tommy did 15 years ago, which is kind of ironic. But you don't necessarily have to attack his supporters. Again, that's the line. And this is where it does get tricky for both Tories and Reform UK. Now, Old woman says, I honestly don't know if I can trust reform. The thing is, I've said this before, and to be objective, this is not a new position. Nigel Farage has had this position for the past 10 years. It's not really, for example, a betrayal. It's not really a U-turn. He stopped Tommy from joining UKIP, for example, at the time. So it's not really anything new. I guess for some people it might be because they didn't probably know much about Nigel's views on Tommy, but that's really the case. LaBelle says, looks like it's going but Tommy versus Elon versus Nigel. I think, as I said, I think Elon's interventions kind of made things complicated for Reform UK, considering he supports both Reform and Tommy. Patrick says, Tommy Robinson is in prison. How can anyone with ambitions of becoming a prime minister possibly associate themselves with someone in prison? Tommy Robinson fanboys need a reality check. I think, again, this goes back to the main point. As Patrick says, it will be hard for a party that wants to be a parliamentary mainstream party to be, I don't know, for example, invite Tommy to the party as a member. But there's a line. You don't have to attack his message or his supporters. That you could just avoid talking about the supporters. And you could say that the movement at least make a good point. We are saying the same things. We are both fighting for the same message. You could just say that and say, but yeah, we have nothing to do with Tommy as an individual, right? And that's a compromise. Maybe I'm just too compromising. We have Ben saying, woke is BS. Big up Elon for exposing Starmer. As I said in the previous live stream, Elon's gone completely unhinged. No one can stop him. He's been posting all day. Obviously, it started a couple of days ago, going full out against Starmer. But today, he's just not stopping. He keeps posting left, right, and center. Kevin says, out of 160,000 Reform members have also funded Tommy a lot, I would say. Have also funded Tommy a lot, I would say. I think I get the message. There is a lot. There's a chunk of Reform UK supporters, a big chunk, who also support Tommy, or at least Tommy's message, right? But I think because they are aiming for different type of supporters, for example, ex-Tories, then they believe that they can just sacrifice some groups and just go with the rest of the people in the country. But again, first past the post makes it difficult because you need even 5 votes that you can in every seat, marginal seat. Carl says, if this doesn't show you that Farage and Reform are pound shop Tories, nothing will. UKIP all the way. I mean, to be fair, again, this is also the same thing because Nigel, his position was always essentially to replace the Tory party as the centre-right party. With UKIP, it was different because UKIP, and as Nigel himself said as leader at the time, it was a single-issue party. It was just to push for the EU referendum for Brexit. But obviously Reform UK is different. It's a wider party with a wider programme. And their only option is to replace the centre-right party as the main opposition party. And this is the strategy that they have. Gaza says, let's go to some non-super chats. Gaza says, if you want to save the UK, we need to vote Reform. Get them in and Tommy will be able to be free as well. That's the other thing, by the way. So if you see it from this perspective, Tommy and his role in this wider movement and others around Tommy as well, because they said the things that nobody was saying at the beginning, he's managed. It's because of the message coming from United Kingdom and Tommy, especially, that the Tory party under Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage and Reform are all now demanding a national inquiry into the grooming gangs, obviously the Oldham situation. So if it weren't for what I call the bulldozers of the debate, who are not diplomatic like Tommy, right? If they weren't for them, open the gates, bring down the gates, people like Kemi would not come out today to say, yes, we demand a national inquiry. Let's not forget, Kemi Badenoch is still part of the same political party and government who also rejected the request for a national inquiry into grooming gangs. So there is benefits of being on the outside the tent, and fighting from the outside. Now, got to switch out from Tesbot as well, saying, I fear reform will backtrack on issues to succeed and become too centrist. Well, it depends if they start doing that, because it will be bad, because Reform UK so far have been, well, obviously it's still a relatively new party, been the one party that hasn't backtracked on any issue. So they haven't made any U-turn or anything they sell, as far as I know. Well, at least anything big. Obviously, with the Tommy thing, it's not really a backtrack. It's been the same position for the past few years, with Nigel for the past 10 years. But if they do, I mean, as a mainstream party, a lot of the parties end up doing compromises anyway. But as long as you're not making big compromises, like Nick Clegg and the Liberal Democrats in 2010, when they said they want to abolish tuition fees and then they increased it in the coalition, that's a bad U-turn. Don't do that. That's too far. And it says UKIP was never a one-issue party. Farage and mainstream media made it. UKIP was a single-issue party from the beginning. That was the whole point of it. And Nigel kept saying it as well. Can focus on one issue, just push for the referendum. And obviously, after Nigel left, then UKIP tried to become just a wider, well, exist as a party to continue to, I guess, promote patriotic policies. But they just couldn't get enough support, I guess, over the last, well, since Nigel left in 2016, I believe, 2016-17. Now, anyway, so this is the situation, the latest situation in inside Reform, among the division inside, among the members, party members, some of the pro and anti-Tommy supporters of Reform. Let me know what you think in the comment section if you're watching this after the live stream. I'm Maya Tusi, and we are the media.